Hi there, thank you so much for clicking the thumbnail and being interested in my work. In this video, part 2, I share with you my techniques and tips on how I put the rich colours and details in the palm tree. Be sure to watch it right through till the end, because here and there I'll be slowing things down in real time so you can take a closer look. So let's dive in and take a look. This is where we left it in part 1. First of all, I'm just placing a piece of glazing paper, which is special paper that don't smudge your work underneath, so I'm going to lean on that. There is the rich colours I'll be using from Caran d'Ache. Then some Carbothello and Conti Pastel pencils, and they're the blue ones I'm using. So the first thing is really to try and get the darkest areas, or some of the dark areas in. You've got to play really just to see what works to start with. So just grab something out of your kit, some colours, and then just see what works. The selection I shown you earlier is just random pencils that I thought might work. So there might be some that I don't use, some I might even add to. So it's just a case of just trying just to see what works to start with. Now I'm using that light ultramarine blue, and there's a light grey I'm using for the in between the actual leaves there. You just got to keep trying different pencils and mixing them together as well. So I'm using a light green colour here, trying that with it, see what that works. It's just playing really, just try and focus on one section just to suss it all out. Then everything else will become easier then once you get to know what you need to do. It's like every picture is always the same. You have to sort of play and just experiment really until you get an idea of what needs to be done. Now to create the deep shadows there, I'm using dark green and cold red. It's always best to use a complementary colour when you use, when you're trying to create a shadow. So the complementary of green is red. Now the great thing about having that grey underdrawing underneath, it just makes life a little easier because you've got guidelines where to go then. And you can use that grey as well to desaturate the colour in some places, and if you want to rich that colour up, put some lemon yellow on or this bright green, it sort of saturates it more then. The thing is about grey, with it being a neutral colour, you can put any colour on the top of it and it can still become fresh, so that's why I used that as an underdrawing. If you haven't seen part 1, check that out after the video, but I'll go into depth on why I use the grey. It's normally I use a blue, but for this instance I tried grey just to see what we're like, because with this palm tree being quite detailed, so I'm always experimenting with different things. I'm growing all the time as well, so I'm just trying different things, seeing what works. See, I can go over that grey and make it sky if I wanted to, or I can make it into a leaf, so I can still play about with it, you see, so it makes it quite interesting to work on. Now there's quite a lot to go through on this one. There's quite a lot of same sort of detail, so I'm going to have to skip here and there and just keep jumping from one section to the other just to get through the video so it's not too long. Now the trick is, if you've used white and on the green and it should be a sky colour, you can always add a bit of red on that green to make it a grey again, and then go over with white, and that's how I'm making it so you can see the sky through it. So if there's a green section that needs to be a grey again, just add red to it and white, and then you can add the blue then, and then you've got little bits of sky through it then. So that's how I do that. Now for these warmer, richer areas, I'm using these pencils here. Added a little bit of burnt sienna in with the mix as well, so some areas are like a golden and green colour, so I just add a little bit of burnt sienna, which you'll see me apply soon. Now the best approach is not to see it as a palm tree or leaves, just see it as light and shade and just let it just happen. Just relax, keep the mind out of the way, just open the heart and you'd be surprised how these things just fall into place. If you overthink things, it will create so much tension because there's so much detail here. And what I've done is simplified the detail as well, so it should be a lot more like fine leaves, but I've not put so many in because it'll be hard for me to do that, because I'd have to keep my pencils razor sharp. So I've gone as much as I can do and just created my own sort of a feel to it. So you've got to be sort of open to your own interpretation. So it's your sort of take on it, if you like. It's your sort of expression of it. So what I like to do is to sort of connect to the energy of it and try and put that into it, try and find the space there and the feeling of nature. So express that rather than trying to get everything exactly the same as what the reference image. Try and put the feeling into there rather than the detail. The details will just take care of themselves, and they'll be just as enough as what's needed, but you can go over the top, and you know, you might as well just have a photograph blown up, really. I mean, art is more than just exact copy, I feel. Just slowing it down to real time now so you can see how I approach these details. Just following that grey line I did in part 1, but then just trying to get a continuous flow with the pencil, putting pressure on more where it's more sort of saturated. Just adding the ultramarine blue light here in between that green. So just take your time with it. You've got to make sure your pencils are sharp all the time, and just turn your point just to create another edge, and then just going over there with the light green in places. I'm trying different whites as well. This is a pit pencil I'm trying because it's a harder lead, so it makes it so you can sharpen that point to really sharp details. So I'm playing with that as well in places. I use the Caran d'Ache white and also the Carbofellow white, but you just got to keep playing, really. It's just a case of seeing what works and then just keep experimenting. Just glazing with different greens and seeing what works. The idea is that white to shine through to make it glow and create chroma. Now here, the stem of those leaves here, or branches, I'm putting the details in white to start with, and then I'll just glaze over with it again with colour on top of that. So just getting that sort of position right first. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? It's absolutely free, and then you're sure not to miss any of my future videos. Now, I had a lot of breaks in between this as well, because you know, when you're doing something this detailed, it's always a good idea to sort of go away from the picture for a while and then come back all afresh. So every sort of hour or something like that, I just went away in 5 minutes and just sat and then come back to it. So I recommend doing that. It just lets you see it freshly every time, because you can get too sort of engrossed in it, and then you can sort of lose your way a little bit. I would recommend just stopping away from the painting about 5 minutes though. Don't leave it any longer than that, really, because you'll find that you'll keep waiting until you feel right again, but you can keep waiting and waiting, and all you get is more waiting. So you've just got to keep jumping in the deep end. Just let go of thinking, just open the heart and just feel your way. Just keep feeling your way all the time. And because if the mind starts to kick in, it'll start wondering how you're going to do all that detail and all that. It'll be looking too far ahead as well, so you'll be looking too far in the future and have expectations of what's got to be done, and that can freeze you as well, because that can sort of upset your balance and create insecurities and a feeling of fear as well, that you know you'll not be able to do it. But you know, if you just let go and just let it happen and just enjoy the feeling and the freedom of it, and just keep in the heart, you'll find it'll just flow from you, and all them fears will just melt away. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all my patrons for all their wonderful support every month. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. If you're considering joining me on Patreon and would like the benefit of longer, slower and more in-depth videos, please check out the link in the description below. Now, this painting will be on my Patreon at some point, and it'll be the whole footage slowed down to as close as real time as I can get it, so you can see every mark I make and every pencil I use. So for the price of a cup of coffee, which is only £4 a month, you've got access to all my videos on there. Now I've got portraits on there, landscapes, animal portraits, also flowers, and some exclusive colour mixing videos that I've made specially for my Patreon. So please check that out if that interests you. Right, so here's some real time, just showing you how I'm glazing with this warm blue I've got from the Conti Paris range. It's really smart because it's quite chalky and vibrant, so when you glaze over it, it really is a great colour to get them subtleties of shadows, and also you can add some yellow to that, which creates really rich greens as well. So really nice to do. So you can see when I'm glazing, the marks I've put underneath are not moving, so it's just a very light scraping of the colour over the top. Now the light fastness of these blues are really good from the Conti Paris range. So what I'm doing then is just using the white to map it all out, and then glaze colours on the top, and then just keep changing it up with different greens, different light greens, lemon yellows. It's just a case of playing, like I mentioned earlier, until you get that sort of feel right. If you're enjoying this video, why not give it a like and share it with your friends? It would mean so much to me, as this would help the channel to grow. Right, so what I'm going to do now is leave you to observe loads of close-ups of the rest of the painting, because I think I've said enough now of the procedure, so it's nice for you to actually see close-up shots as I progress along the way. I hope you've enjoyed part 2. I've really enjoyed doing this. It's been amazing to do. Love the actual freedom you've got. Interesting way of doing it. You know, if you haven't seen part 1, how I did the underdrawing for this, please remember to check that out. Helps you to actually see a way of getting details down without being too over rendered, so it's more sort of impressionistic and suggestive. Be sure to watch out for part 3. I'll be doing the water, the sand and the tree trunk there and putting the final details in. So if you're interested in seeing more of my work, here's a series link here that you might be interested in. Take care.